A respected black college lecturer faces public humiliation when a racist police officer unjustly arrests him during a lecture, right in front of his shocked students. But the officer has no idea who he's dealing with. What unfolds next is a powerful revelation that exposes bias, power, and hidden strength. Watch this emotional, gripping story of injustice, identity, and redemption. Point 1. The calm before the storm. It was a bright Tuesday afternoon at Wexler University, one of the most respected institutions in the region. Room 204 in the political science building buzzed with energy as students filtered into their seats, chatting about current events, upcoming exams, and campus gossip. At the front of the room stood Dr. Elijah Mercer, a sharply dressed, calm-spoken black lecturer in his mid-40s. His presence commanded attention, not with loudness, but with intellect and quiet authority. He wore a navy blazer, wire-framed glasses, and the kind of composed confidence that only came from someone who had seen more than he let on. "Good afternoon, class," he greeted as he placed his leather satchel on the desk. "Today, we're discussing the ethical boundaries of law enforcement and civil liberties." The irony, as fate would have it, was thick in the air. Dr. Mercer wasn't just a lecturer. He had a past, one that few knew about, a past involving deep undercover work, national security, and secrets that never made it to textbooks. To his students, he was just a brilliant mind. To those in government circles, he was Special Agent Elijah Mercer on temporary leave, though technically still active. But that day, none of that mattered, because to one man outside the classroom, all he saw was a black man in authority. Just as Elijah was explaining Miranda rights and their origins, the door to the lecture hall burst open with a loud clack. Heads turned. In walked Officer Craig Thorne, a local police officer known in certain circles, not for his integrity, but for his aggression. Mid-30s, buzz-cut, bulky frame, and an air of self-importance that made even silence uncomfortable. He looked around the room, narrowed his eyes at the only black man standing in front of class, and made a decision that would change his life forever. "You step away from the podium," Thorne barked, hand already on his belt. The room went dead silent. Elijah raised an eyebrow but didn't move. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Hands where I can see them. "Now." A gasp escaped from one of the students in the front row. "Sir," Elijah said, calm but firm, "this is a university lecture in progress. May I ask what this is about?" "I got a call about a suspicious person posing as faculty. We take impersonation seriously." Thorne snapped, advancing. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." More gasps. Whispers buzzed around classroom. One student, Maya, reached for her phone. "Wait, that's Dr. Mercer. He teaches his class." "Put that phone down." Thorne snapped, pointing a finger at her. "One more word and you're obstructing." Elijah stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. "Officer, there must be some mistake. I've been lecturing here for 5 years. If you check." Click. The cold steel of handcuffs snapped around Elijah's wrists. "You're under arrest for trespassing and impersonation," Thorne said loudly. "Anything you say can and will be used against you." "I can't believe this," one of the students muttered, pulling out their phone to record. "Is this real?" another asked. "No way, he's our professor. I can't believe this is happening in class." Elijah remained composed. He didn't resist. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply stared into the eyes of Officer Thorne with a knowing calm that was almost unsettling. "You're making a mistake," Elijah said quietly, "and you'll want to remember this moment." Thorne scoffed. "Oh, I will. It's not every day you catch someone red-handed." Students watched in disbelief as their professor was walked out of the classroom in handcuffs. The video of the incident was already going viral on campus social media within minutes. At the precinct, Elijah was processed like a common criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole routine. But things began unraveling quickly for Officer Thorne. First, the university administrator called. Then the dean. Then, in a voice that sounded more commanding than the governor, the deputy director of Homeland Security called the precinct directly. By the time Elijah was placed in a holding room, multiple squad cars arrived. Not local PD, federal agents. Thorne, still smug, leaned back in his chair. Let me guess, your lawyer? Elijah smiled faintly. Something like that. The door opened. In walked Agent Carla Ruiz, wearing a dark suit and credentials that carried more weight than Thorne could understand. You cuffed a federal agent during a university lecture? Ruiz demanded. Thorne paled. What? Elijah stood. I tried to tell him. He wasn't interested in facts. Thorne's hands trembled as reality crashed into him. Elijah Mercer, not just a lecturer, a decorated federal special agent with clearance far above anything the local PD could dream of. Ruiz turned to Elijah. You okay? I'm fine, but we need to make this public. My students deserve the truth. What about pressing charges? Ruiz asked. Elijah paused, considering. Not yet. Let's see what he does when the world learns the full story. Ruiz nodded as Thorne was ushered out of the room. Disbelief etched on his face. Elijah turned and said quietly, next time, officer, look past color of man's skin before putting him in cuffs. 6. Viral within hours. By the time Elijah stepped out of the police precinct, the video had already racked up over 2.3 million views on TikTok, 500,000 retweets, and had made it to the trending list under hashtags like #hashtag the StoryForge, E3R. Students from across the country, Black, white, Latino, Asian, rallied in support. Within hours, the university campus was swarmed by news vans, protest signs, and chants echoing through the quad. Who's the threat? Not our prof. He taught us law. Now teach that cop. We are Mercer. Inside his modest apartment, Elijah sat calmly in front of his laptop, watching the footage over and over. Not because he needed to, he had lived it, but because he wanted to understand what they saw. The fear, the disbelief, the injustice unfolding live. A soft knock broke his thoughts. It was Dean Wallace, a balding white man in his 60s with a reputation for fence-sitting on racial matters. Elijah, I just came from the chancellor's office. He began awkwardly. We're deeply sorry. Elijah studied him in silence. The board want to offer you a public apology, Wallace continued. We'll be holding a press conference tomorrow. Anything you want said, we'll say it. I don't need words, Elijah replied. I need change. The next day, Elijah returned to campus. Not quietly. He walked straight into the same lecture hall, room 204, to find it packed beyond capacity. Not just students from his class, but others too. Faculty, media, people sitting on the floor, pressed against walls. He stood at the podium, the same spot where he was humiliated. Then, without notes, without emotion, he told them everything. My name is Dr. Elijah Mercer. Some of you know me as your professor. But for over 15 years, I serve as a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I've worked undercover. I protected lives. And yet, all it took was one man's prejudice to erase all of that. Maya, the student who had tried to speak up during the incident, wiped a tear. This isn't about me being a special agent, Elijah continued. This is about the fact that even if I weren't, I deserve dignity, respect, due process. All of us do. The crowd erupted in applause, but Elijah raised his hand for silence. I didn't speak up at the time. Because sometimes power doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it waits. And now it teaches. He looked toward the back, where Officer Thorne stood in civilian clothes, watching, humiliated, powerless. By the end of that week, Officer Craig Thorne had been suspended without pay, sued for wrongful arrest, racial profiling, and defamation, exposed for 2 prior misconduct complaints that had been buried. The city was under pressure. Civil rights groups flooded the mayor's office. Local news anchors used phrases like pattern of abuse and systemic accountability. Thorne tried to apologize publicly. He released a statement. I deeply regret my actions toward Dr. Mercer. I made a mistake. I was responding to a call, and I reacted based on training. Elijah responded through a televised interview. He didn't react based on training. He reacted based on bias. A week later, Elijah was summoned to Washington, a closed-door meeting. was held with the Department of Justice and representatives from Homeland Security. They had seen the damage, not just to Dr. Mercer, but to public trust. "Elijah," said one senior official, "would you consider returning not as an agent, but as an advisor on law enforcement reform?" Elijah looked up, his eyes steady. "Not if I have to water it down." "You won't," she replied. "We want your voice. Loud, honest, and unfiltered." Back at Wexler University, Elijah wrapped up the semester with a final lecture titled "Power, Prejudice, and the Politics of Perception." He stood before the class, not as a victim, not even as a hero, but as a man who turned pain into purpose. "Bias doesn't wear a uniform," he told them. "Sometimes it wears a badge, sometimes a robe, sometimes even a teaching credential." He looked out at his students, young, fired up, forever changed. "But remember, the most powerful weapon we have is truth, and truth doesn't need permission." Elijah Mercer's story became a national conversation, not just about racial profiling, but about the layers of identity, about the danger of assumptions, about how even the most powerful among us are not immune to the scars of injustice. His experience taught a country, a campus, and an officer a hard lesson. Never judge a person by what you see in a moment, because you might be cuffing the very one sent to protect you. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, and share. Every voice counts. Every story matters.